Hello and welcome to the Car Auto Reviews channel, and welcome to the 2025 Genesis GV80. And in today's video, we're going to do a proper technical review under the hood, take a look underneath it, inside and out, some things we like, some things we do not like, right after this. Let's start our technical review under the hood. The GV80 could have two engine options. You could have the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder or the 3.5 liter 6-cylinder V6, like this one. Since this is the model that we've been testing, we're going to focus on the V6 model in this video. So this is a 3.5 liter V6 twin turbocharged direct and port injected. Let's get into the mechanical details. Very top, you have plastic valve covers. Seems to be the norm in the automotive industry. The quality of this plastic valve cover is mid-grade. That's the best way I'll put it. It's not the top quality that we've seen, but it's definitely not even close to the worst. So mid-grade is what I'm going to put it at. Underneath that is a two-piece cylinder head with roller rockers and hydraulic lifters. You do have dual variable valve timing and of course dual cam. You do have three timing chains with this engine. You have one for each bank and then one little one for the oil pump. Both the main ones for the cams have internal timing chain tensioners. The little one for the oil pump does have a little guide that is spring loaded. That's a pretty common design in a lot of engines these days, a lot of V6 and 4 cylinders, so nothing strange there. Now the variable valve timings actuators, they are oil controlled. They do have the style that goes in the front cover, little solenoid that pushes the bolt of the actuator, and that is actually the oil control valve. So it's a very minimized oil circuit, not running all over the place. So I really like that design. It's very simple for service and pretty long lasting if things are done well by the manufacturer. Now the block is aluminum and it does have one of those kind of cradle at the bottom that contains the caps for the mains, so it's one unit that comes up. Now let's talk about the cooling system of this engine. It does have a very fancy thermal management valve, basically a coolant distribution valve to help with faster warm-ups or whatnot. This does have a mechanical water pump that is belt driven, not by the chain. It's an external water pump, readily available and accessible, which is good. It does have flaps in the front that open and close in front of the radiator to help also with that faster warm-up. Now the fuel system in this car, we have both direct and port injection at the same time. This is very cool because you have the best of both worlds and it doesn't build carbon. That's pretty cool. You do have one high pressure fuel pump that sits on the passenger side all the way in the back, and then you have a low pressure fuel pump in the tank. That's pretty standard setup for a dual injection system. Now this engine is turbocharged, actually twin turbocharged, so you have two turbochargers. They are both oil and coolant cooled. They do have an electronic wastegate, but they do have air to liquid intercooler, which is very cool. I think what is cool about it is the location. It sits right in the front, very accessible, does have its own separate circuit of coolant, electric water pump, radiator, and reservoir that sits right there. Now the GV80 Genesis with the 3.5 liter does have an 8-speed automatic transmission, no dual clutch, none of that stuff, no DCT, whatnot, no CVT. It's just a normal 8-speed automatic transmission with a torque converter. Now the GV80 does have all-wheel drive standard. Let's talk about that a little bit. So this is a rear-wheel drive configured vehicle. So the transmission will be mounted to the engine facing the back of the car. At the end of the transmission, you're going to have a small transfer case that kind of turns that power around and faces it to the front. Then you have a drive shaft that takes it to the front differential, which sits right on the passenger side of the engine. The axle goes to that wheel, and then the axle for the driver's side actually goes through the oil pan into the wheel. That is a pretty standard setup for this configuration of vehicles with all-wheel drive. So this is not overcomplicated. What all of them are like that. There's no other way to do it. And then of course at the end of the transmission, power goes to the rear wheels. Now having said all that, let's talk about a few observations, just looking around the engine bay and kind of scanning things around. There's good things, there's strange things, and there's not so good things, gotta say. First, the good things. Let's start on a positive note. There's a lot of hoses that are hose and clamp and proper metal pipe and whatnot. I like the design of the top where the air filter housings come off, and it gives you a lot of room for service. There is decent room around this engine. I'm not going to say it's the best. Spark plugs are pretty accessible, so the plenum, the intake manifold does not go around, or the plenum, so you have direct access to the spark plugs. At least makes that part of the service is simple. This has a double cowl, so it does take a little bit of space, makes access this in the side of the engine a little bit tighter, but it's not impossible. The front's pretty wide open, except that intercooler takes up that space, but I feel like it's not a very difficult thing to remove, and then you have a lot of space. That is the nice thing about this. Now, the medium things, I'm going to call them. I am noticing there's a lot of proper hose and clamp hoses and metal pipe and whatnot, but there's also a lot of plastic stuff in the cooling system. I don't understand why manufacturers do it. Well, I do understand. It's for cost cutting. There's no other reason. And then my favorite one, I see this in a few Hyundai Genesis models, the extremely flimsy and plasticky coolant pipe, hose or pipe or however you want to call it, that just, as soon as you open the hood, it's right there. Don't know what's going on there. Why don't we put a hose and clamp? Saves a few cents. The next one is, which is just the top thing I got to share with you. I just can't hold it. I'm sorry. There is a coolant hose. It's a radiator hose that goes to the engine. So you have a hose, a clamp, and a little plastic housing. I can live with that. I can live with that. But then at the end of that plastic housing, there is a quick connect thing. So why do we have the hose and clamp if we're going to have a quick connect? I don't know why that is the case. That's for assembly, folks, because they have the same thing here on the intake. That's for assembly. When you clip it in, super simple. Just clip it in, we're done. When you go to take it out after 5, 6, 7 years, yeah, that's a completely different story when things start breaking left and right, because we have to put tension on this, and then the whole plastic, we have to kind of maneuver it. While if you just had a hose and clamp, which we already have, we wouldn't have issues. But that's what they love to do. Not just Genesis. I'm not going to Genesis. They all do that lately. And that's the problem. That's one more thing that's going to add to these cars, not lasting a very long time. And I'm not going to say I see a lot of that here, but I see a little bit of that here. That's just the truth have to be said. Let's take a look underneath the 2025 Genesis GV80. Now, of course, luxury car, everything is covered and covered pretty good. Now, they did leave you a little access area for the, like for an oil change, for example, filters at the top. So that is nice, but anything else, gotta pull the whole cover off. Let's take a look at the front suspension. So, couple control arms at the bottom with 2 separate ball joints, aluminum knuckle. Shock is one of those deals that have a little arm that comes around and connects to the lower control arm. It is a coil spring. It is not air suspension. This is something we're going to talk about with this car. I wish it was. This is all-wheel drive. You're always going to have all-wheel drive in 2025. So axle is painted, and I really like that. Both ends are painted, and that is really nice. They're getting this part right. Now the brakes. Got to talk about the brakes. You have this massive, ginormous caliper, and this, ladies and gentlemen, in case you see it on your car, this is called an afterthought. In case you didn't realize, this is a vibration dampener, meaning they did all the suspension, they went for a drive and like, oops, vibration. So they added a little dampener to absorb that. It happens, folks. That's basically, if you see that, this does absolutely nothing but absorb vibration. Now, this suspension is complicated. Upper control arms also aluminum. I think we mentioned that. It's complicated, does have a lot of moving parts, but it does make for a decent handling, except the coil spring. We'll talk about that. Moving on from that to the exhaust. Now, we got to talk about this exhaust. Up to this point, you notice this is a full flange, and look how nice the finish on this catalytic converter is. Then the exhaust pipe. This is typical. We've seen this a lot with Genesis. Some of their parts of their exhaust is nice, some of it is not. This is the not nice part. I don't know what kind of coating this has, but it just doesn't doesn't look like high quality. The truth have to be said. What does look high quality is the rest of it. I love how covered this car is, and of course, being how quiet it is, you expect that. Look how well covered everything is. I mean, you barely can see the drive shaft here, and that is pretty cool. Now, we talked about the transfer case and the all-wheel drive and the engine section or powertrain section. This is the transfer case. It's such a small transfer case. It sends power to the front. If you look right here on the side, you can actually see the drive shaft that goes to the front differential, and then the axle goes through the oil pan to the other side. That's what we talked about. Transmission does have a plastic oil pan. At least that was not the case, but that's how everybody's doing it. Pretty cool transmission. Does have decent space around it, even being an all-wheel drive. I do like how close they tuck the drive shaft to the transmission and how small the unit is. I do like that because it gives you room around the transmission if you need to do something. Let's take a look at the back of the car. So massive differential, because this is kind of a rear-wheel drive car that has all-wheel drive attached to it. So it does have a massive rear differential. That's what you expect. I do like that they are painted again. I wish we'd start seeing more manufacturers do this. Some of them used to do this, they don't anymore. And then we have this massive control arm. Look at this thing. You have everything attached to it. You have the coil spring attached to it. You have the shock attached to it. You have the sway bar link attached to it. It is massive. And it does have a single ball joint at the end. I can't help but say I worry about this ball joint. I think she's gonna have a rough life. The one thing I notice is if you look close, there's actually a snap ring. I didn't get a chance to look into the parts catalog here. I wonder if that's replaceable separate from the knuckle. That would be really nice, although that's a steel ball joint, at least the housing of it. This is an aluminum. It's never gonna come apart in the future, but it is an aluminum knuckle. And you have a single piston caliper over here with the integrated parking brake on it. The exhaust ends up to the two pipes, the actual two pipes, come to a single large muffler, and then it exits on both sides. I can live with that. I can live with that. It's partially open until it's not. I can live with that. Same thing on this side. I can definitely live with that. I like that. They left it open, but they covered at least the important bits. I wish they would have covered the whole thing, but can't have all in life. Let's take a look at the outside of the 2025 Genesis GV80. I gotta say one thing. This design language of Genesis started to really grow on me. It has a certain elegant look. Some folks will say their logo looks like that and this and that. But I like that they're establishing their own image. These slashes look very elegant. The grille, a little bit on the bigger side, but it does look pretty luxurious. I like it. Looks classy. I really like the way this looks. If you notice, the hood doesn't have the design that's over the top. One line here, and I like how this line emphasizes the logo and goes back. You can see that when you drive it. It's pretty cool. Radar sensors all the way at the bottom. I wish that was not the case, because that's very low, easily to hit on curbs and whatnot. But overall, the front looks really nice. The side, same thing. This is a pretty big car. I gotta say that. It's that's not the word I want to say. The word I want to say is ginormous. That's huge. And driving it, you will feel that. Let's look at the smaller details here. This is what I love about it. Because of the way this fender is raised, and this crease kind of comes down, it gives it a very interesting look. It almost looks like the front is higher than the rear. It's obviously an optical illusion, it's exactly flat, but it just gives it a very luxurious look. Now these wheels, these optional 22-inch wheels, almost look like small wheels, just to tell you how big this car is. It's massive, and you feel it when you drive it. Love the two lines here. That's part of their design as well. Basically lights up the entire neighborhood when you turn the turn signal. It's actually pretty cool. Love the chrome at the bottom. Finally, we don't have cheap looking plastic at the bottom. Proper chrome on your high trim. That's the proper way to do it. Then we go here. This is the only part I don't understand. I understand they're trying to do a design, but you kind of cut the visibility. I wish this was straight. give you a little bit more visibility here because this is a large car. Let's talk about the doors. Obviously, they're lock unlocked. It's a luxury car, both front and back. But here are the interesting things. Let's take a look. First, a lot of luxury cars will do this. They'll put this strip of weather stripping here to soften the sound of the door closing. And of course, this being a soft closed door, sometimes you will not hear that sound. It's a soft closed door, but if I close it, just give it that big thud. That's actually what does it. But usually they never do it in the back door, except Genesis did. But they put it here. A lot of manufacturers actually put nothing there. So their door thud doesn't sound as nice. Like this one, also soft close, but when I close it normally, it just gives it a nice thud. However, handles could be nicer. I mean, we did all that for the door. The handles just feel like a normal car. This is a pretty expensive car. Then we come around the back. Probably one of the biggest design cues that make this look very, very elegant and stately is this dip here. It just gives it a very interesting shape, and I love it. I love also that the taillights follow the same design, the two lines. Everything's chrome at the bottom. You don't have cheapo black plastic, except here a little bit. Just pretend you don't see that. I really like how this looks. Now, this doesn't have any kind of bumper. You hit it, you hit anything, it's gonna hit the back door. That's how most new cars are going with. It says Genesis written pretty big, and I really like this font. GV80, and then consumer advice to Genesis. All-wheel drive 3.5T. I can understand the 3.5T as we talked about. They're all all-wheel drive. So you can take that badge off, save yourself 3 cents. Let's take a look in the back. And this is something interesting. Most cars in this, like this style SUV, they'll have the handle here to open it, some of them here. Well, this one doesn't have anything here. They actually put it right here. I actually like that. It's kind of a strange location, but I like that because it's right there. You don't have to lean down or anything to open it. Once I know how to open it, let's take a look at the back. First, I'd like you to observe the gleaming absence of the third row seat in this particular one. Oh, they're available, and only, at least what I could figure here, only on one trim is third row is available. Not this one. This one is the top trim Prestige. Doesn't have it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's take a look here. Has pretty decent storage because first, we don't have the third row, and second, there is no spare tire. You have a tire mobility kit instead. It's a pretty large space, and you can fold the second row seat from here, and then once takes a minute. Once they wear down, that's a lot of space, and that's when you start to realize how large this car is. It is not a small car. And you'll feel it driving it. But what I love about this, and we're going to carry this conversation inside the car, just look at this carpet. Initially, just a mat in the back, but it's actually a very lush and nice carpet. Same thing here. They didn't put the same fragile Alcantara or suede or whatever you want to call it that is on the headliner all the way to down, because this will tear up very easy. They put a heavier duty one, but they completely covered it. You only have this tiny strip of plastic. I love that. This is the little stuff that makes a huge difference. And then you look here. This beautiful aluminum. Even this has a cover that has aluminum. And even the striker, they made it in a color that matches, so it looks uniform. Now this, of course, is a power back door. It does have 2 motors. Does have the wire going into the headliner, which that was not the case. And it does have close the door and lock. So that is nice. Funny thing is, where's my third row, Genesis? Let's take a look at the interior of the GV80. I gotta say one thing. This is the top reason why you would buy this car. I would have to say that. This interior execution, both from a material, fit and finish, and functionality, is exceptional. That's the word I'm going to use here. And Genesis have been doing this so well with the last few cars we've reviewed. They get it. What you get with this interior is a blend of old school luxury and new school luxury. So on the one hand, almost every single surface you touch is a nice material. The fit and finish is exceptional. The layout is very classic and just focused. There's no gimmicks. There's no hard attempt at make something exuberant just to make it cool. You don't have that here. I mean, you look at the steering wheel. It is basically a normal steering wheel. All the controls are very basic, normal, nothing over the top. But just putting leather on the horn pad here and the airbag just makes it look super nice. And then the two-tone color on the steering wheel, just beautiful to look at. Then you look at the gauges. This is just a giant screen. I usually don't like gauges that are a screen, but if you look at this, it's a continuous piece to the infotainment system. It just looks so natural, so nice. And the screen does have a lot of functionality. You can view the map on it. You can do a lot of stuff. The infotainment is the latest infotainment from Genesis. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, pretty fast. We didn't have any issues with it in the testing, but they didn't go over the top with technology because all your HVAC controls, they're not physical button, but they are on a dedicated screen with touch capacitive buttons and important stuff, but it's always there. You don't have to go through 7 menus just to access it. The one thing about this screen that is, I'm trying to understand it. Screen is a little bit far away. And they gave you this rotary dial to control it, but that was not enough because the top of the rotary dial is actually a touchpad, which you can also use to operate that. Feel that situation is a little bit too much. I mean, this makes a very nice sound when you operate it. It does work pretty good, but I feel like that touch, sometimes you operate this and you touch the top by mistake and it just jumps on you. I wish this was actually not there secretly. And then there is the shifter. The shifter is a rotary dial. I dislike it very much. I really dislike this. I wish it was 30 buttons. That would be very nice. But it's very nice to look at. I'll tell you that much. So as you're frustrating with it, at least it's nice to look at. This interior, I just got to say this one more time, is a beautiful place to be in. It's insulated. It's quiet. The fit and finish, they spared no expense here. They went all out. And they've been doing that with a lot of their cars. What I love about this is, if you get a lot of cars in the similar segment and similar price range, this easily comes at the top. The only thing this doesn't have is the badge that most want. And if you are really looking behind things, this will make a lot of cars in this segment feel very cheap and plasticky, and they usually cost more. This is such a nice interior. I think this is the top reason you would consider this, because this has old school luxury. Quiet, refined, nice design and nice materials and very exceptional build quality. I love this interior from every level. And on top of that, you have modern amenities that actually work. And they don't intrude on anything. I love that. Let's take a look at the second row seat of the GV80. I love being here. I just gotta say it, because the same good stuff you have in the front, you have in the rear as well. They didn't cheap out. For example, you have an entire dedicated HVAC zone here. So this car is a 3-zone HVAC system. And then the seats are super comfortable. And let's look at the finer details here. See, most manufacturers, they'll put really nice leather and then they'll just put a slab of plastic here. Even some pretty expensive cars. This one, it does have a slab of plastic, but it's covered with leather. And a very nice leather. I love this. This is the way to do it if you're going to cheap out. Put a slightly lesser leather, but it's still very nice. Love that. Then you do have HVAC controls here for your separate zone for the back. You do have a household outlet here and 2 USB-Cs. And then you look at the door. I love that the same pattern of leather all around carries to the back. But here's the cool thing. A lot of cars in this segment, you won't have this. Even though this is one more thing that's going to break in the future, but I love it. I think it's one of the coolest things about this, because a lot of cars in this segment are slowly losing stuff like that. You just have a manual thing that you have to put up. Love it. So here's the last thing about the back seat, which is pretty interesting. This is not a 60-40 seat. This is actually called a 40-20-40. And the way this works is a little bit of a weird access to it. So I get it. There we go. So if you have a really long item, you can put it here, and the two people here will be very comfortably sitting. Instead, if you had a 60-40, you fold the 40, well, now you only are sitting in 60% of the seat. That's how that works. But this is not the center console. You still have a pretty nice center console with a little storage area. That is pretty smart. I really like that about this car. And I wish we could say that we're going now to the third row seat test, but this one doesn't have it. This is one of the things we're going to talk about in the next section. Let's talk about some things I do not like about the Genesis GV80. This is a very impressive SUV, I gotta say, but there's two things that I wish they would change. First, the third row seat. Now, I have to say one thing. Throughout the videos that we've talked about models that are large SUVs that don't or have a third row seat, some of our viewers have mentioned that they want a car without third row seat that is large. And I fully understand that. And I completely admire and respect the comments of my viewers. But here's the way I see it. If you need a large SUV that just for the space, 99, if not 100% of SUVs with a third row seat, they fold down. So fold them down, you have this exact same space, because the exact same space that will be taken by the third row seat would be converted to a tiny little storage area that adds absolutely nothing to the car. That's, I just have to say it. My problem with this is you only have third row seat in one trim, not across the entire lineup. For example, this top of the line Prestige doesn't have a third row seat. I wish it was more available, or at least available as an option on every trim. If we're not feeling like this is something that the buyer of this car is going to want, but have it available, because large majority of folks who will look at a large SUV like this will want a third row seat. They can fold it down when they need the space. And that's one thing. The second thing is the suspension. This is such a refined SUV. I mean, it's such a nice place to be in, but the suspension is a slight letdown. You go over a bumpy road, you're gonna feel every one of them. It almost, you don't expect it. It's not like jarring or anything, but it intrudes on the experience of this car. I feel like air suspension would be very suitable for a car of this stature, because it would really just take things to the next level suspension-wise, but it's not even available as an option. Wish that was the case. Small nitpick there. So, the Genesis GV80. This is truly an impressive SUV. The truth have to be said. And more impressive than this is particular SUV is Genesis lately. They are doing something that a lot of luxury manufacturers are not really doing very well. I gotta say that. Now, they are targeting the average Joe that wants a nice car. They're not targeting the top luxury gimmicky cars that have the latest and the greatest, and then they're cycled every 2 years. They're going after more like Lexus, Acura, Infiniti, less BMW, Mercedes, Audi. That's the cool part. And they're doing it so well. Here's the bottom line on this car. It is massive. Truth have to be said, it is very large. Sometimes you look at it on the outside, it doesn't feel as large, but it is massive, and you feel it when you drive it. The outside looks are nice and everything. I love the image that they have. They're consistent, and that's what builds luxury brands. You see this, if you don't know what it is and you've seen one Genesis, you know this is a Genesis just from its design language, and I really like how it looks. Then the inside. I think you buy this car for its inside, flat out. If you don't like the outside, it's just regular, bland, whatnot, that's fine. The inside is why you buy it for. And here's what I love about this car. It doesn't come with the badge tax. That's what I'm going to call it. Because this particular one is a Prestige, which is one of the higher trims. It costs $80,000, just north of that. That's a lot of money. But when you get inside and you look at everything, Oh, that's why it costs this much, because the interior is just proper luxury from every level. There is not a single surface you're going to touch, look at, that just feels plasticky and flimsy and cheap. No, everything feels solid, and I love that. And the best part is it's old school luxury with new school modern stuff. Not gimmicky. There's zero gimmicks and zero drama, and I love that. You have very nice materials and exceptional build quality on the inside, and I love it. I mean, there is not, I tried to look through this car to find one thing that is flimsy. I couldn't find it. I'm very impressed by that. And then the technology, it does not disappoint. I love the big screen. It's just, I'm not a big fan of screens on gauges, but this one just looks like it's well thought of. And it blends very well. Every single technology you want in a car, it is here. You're not going to miss it. Now, the only gimmick, you have to say that, maybe two. It's gotta keep them honest here. The shifter, I absolutely dislike. I love looking at it, but I don't like to operate it. And the perfume. Let's just say every car that has a perfume option this is the top gimmick you can have. I had to say that. Now with that, the GV80 is not perfect. No car ever is. So let's talk about the not perfect stuff. I wish the third row seat for such a large SUV was more available, because in my limited research here, there's only one trim that has that available as an option. I wish it was more available, or you can have the small option of removing it or something like that for folks who don't want it. But I wish it was more available. It makes it more appealing to other group of buyers that need a large SUV with third row. Second thing is, as nice as this car is, I truly feel like it is missing the air suspension, even as an option. Because the suspension is, for as nice as its interiors and as insulated as it is, it leaves a little bit more to be desired. I just gotta say that. It's not the smoothest in the world. It could be better. And I think an air suspension would really resolve what we're feeling with this car and would make it a lot better. Folks, this is a truly impressive SUV, and the price at the higher trims seems like a lot, but when you start comparing it to others in this segment, this is a lot better than a lot of SUVs that feel very cheap and flimsy, and you basically are paying that high price for the badge in the front. And then when you go in the lower trims, it's still a very nice SUV. When you compare it to other competitors in that segment, if this had a third row as standard, this would really start coming at the top. So that's why I feel like third row option would, across the line, would be a really welcome addition. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.